My name is Kayvon. I head up the Impact for Breakfast network, and it's very nice to have you join us. We anticipate many others joining us today. It was strong registration numbers for this session. Let's see how it goes. I just want to give you a bit of background on the IFB, Impact for Breakfast. We started about 18 or so years ago, spearheaded by Audrey, who's on the call. And very informal, people getting around a table in a coffee shop. And in that time, it's now grown to almost 6,000 members. We're a decentralized network. There's over 50 chapters, about to sign on 2 new ones. Remarkable things, it's just growing organically. Some chapters are extremely active, others are quiet, and then they bubble up and host a couple of events and gain some momentum. So uh, we are here to support, basically, to bring some great organizations to the event table in person or virtually, and connect them with where some investors sit. And our membership is largely focused on investors, advisors to investors, and then observers, people who want to just learn more about what's going on. So this morning we have the Evergreen Innovation Platform um, sitting with us and the Lemelson Foundation. Daniela will be presenting from the Evergreen Innovation Platform, EIP, and Maggie will be presenting for Lemelson. So I'd like to just get us started with a question. We try to make these things conversational. I'd love to ask Daniela a question. Just really, can you set the stage, set the context? I've had the privilege of working with smallholders for many, many years. They have unique set of challenges. They have unique challenges depending on where they are on this big, beautiful planet. And they're also part of a solution. And if you could contextualize that for us, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's my first time, hopefully not my last. Um, sorry. So just to set the stage and sort of make sure that we're all speaking from the same sort of basic understanding of the smallholder farmer market segment. About 95% of global farms are cultivating, or farmers are cultivating under 5 hectares of land. So just to translate, that's about 12 acres. 84% are under 2 hectares, so really smallholder farmers. This is estimated to be about 550 to 600 million farmers globally, primarily in the global south, but not only. Um, and so this is a huge market segment and a huge part of agricultural production in the world. So really important, right? We're talking about smallholder farmers, and a lot of times, especially in these conversations, we look at them um, as having so many challenges and so many needs, but they are so essential to global food security. Um, and and also they at the end of the day hold a lot of I think about 25% of the land globally. This is also not a small number. And we work at Evergreen Innovation Platform. We work specifically at the moment in India. India has an estimated 150 million farmers. Um, about 89% of agricultural households in India are smallholder farmers. So this is a huge proportion of the Indian agricultural market. It's actually based on smallholder farmers under 2 hectares, for the context before. Now, they produce about 80% of the food in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. 80%. And I want that number to resonate because, again, they are critically important. And the numbers that they represent are actually an interesting market segment, a challenging one from a business perspective. But the numbers are there, especially in India. So we're looking at a market of 150 million farmers. Even 5% of that market, if you're able to tap into it correctly and sell to that market segment, can be very profitable. Smaller margins, but larger numbers. At the end of the day, these are different business models than what we're used to seeing, but very important. Um, But I do want to talk about the unique challenges of these smallholder farmers, right? We have challenges of last mile distribution. They are living off of, let's say, an average monthly income of about $120. That would be the equivalent to the US. Um, but actually, the households are in debt, about $850 in debt annually for their agricultural cycles. So there's a very, very, very thin line there between finishing the year and not being able to feed themselves. Very challenging context, very limited resources, and therefore very risk averse. They're scared of change. They are worried about their future because it really is linked to their land. And last, they are already at the forefront of the impacts of climate change. As we were having this conversation a little bit earlier, they are already feeling um, the impacts of drought, extreme heat, different kinds of flooding, unexpected rains, not enough. All of these impacts of climate change are already happening on the ground. And so that's where sort of we came to think about what role innovation can play at addressing these challenges, what role innovation can play in unlocking the business opportunity, maintaining food security, and improving livelihoods, resilience, and climate adaptation. Which is too often not the conversation when we think about climate. About 5% of global climate funding is going to agriculture. We can all imagine, because we don't know, but imagine how much of that is going to smallholder farming. And unfortunately, the numbers are um, are still not even close to where we need them to be. Um, so so back to the potential that I think we see in innovation, in the potential to leapfrog and really improve everything from soil preparation all the way throughout the season to post harvest and even market linkages. Innovation can really be transformative. But this is where I actually want to pass it on to you, Maggie, and take a step back about the Lemelson Foundation really is focused on innovation and entrepreneurship as a key lever. And so, how you see innovation in this context and in general.
Sure. Thanks, Daniela. And thank you all for having us. Um, so briefly, I'm a program officer at the Lemelson Foundation and have been for around 7.5 years. Lemelson Foundation, private family office based, or excuse me, private family foundation based in the US. And we do focus on invention and entrepreneurship as these powerful levers for social change and impact. We're more agnostic to what kind and more focused on who. So we know that the systems that enable innovation and entrepreneurship are not benefiting us all. And so we really focus on like who are those marginalized or underserved populations globally for whom innovation systems and entrepreneurship systems need to be more accessible or need to be redesigned to be more inclusive of. And smallholder farmers are one of those groups that we see a lot of the innovation that does reach them being very incremental. And part of the reason for that is the cost of doing innovation in agriculture is really high. And the systems that really support innovation in agriculture are oriented towards large commercial scale farming. And it makes sense because those are the opposite sort of dynamics as what Daniela was describing. Those are higher margin and more concentrated, higher volume sales opportunities. It doesn't have the fragmentation of smallholder farmers. So we've been looking for a long time at like what would enable much more transformational innovation for smallholder farmers. What is that structure that would enable innovation to reach and to be more intentionally designed and developed for smallholder farmers, which is how we came to find EIP. Uh, and we can spend time talking about like what that looks like if that's helpful. But I think what's most relevant in terms of like Lemelson's perspective on it is we spend a lot of time thinking about like what is, you know, there's not a lot of money to support innovation systems. We have been making grants and largely concessional or higher risk, more patient investments for 20 years to incubators and accelerators and early stage seed funds to make these systems work more for underserved markets. And smallholder farmers is kind of one of those key underserved groups. So we spend a lot of time thinking about like, what is it that's going to make capital go there and what's going to make innovation that is more transformational work for this community, recognizing that innovation and entrepreneurship can't solve everything. It's part of the set of solutions, but it's the one that we know the best.
That's brilliant, Maggie. Thanks. Thanks a lot. So, without diving all the way into the details of what EIP does and what you love about them, um, what are one or two key things that really set them apart? What are gaps that they're addressing through innovation, being
Yeah.
inventive? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, I'll start with sort of that efficient use of capital because alternatively, what we have seen is you have a lot of startup companies, many of whom may only have one product or innovation, but others that may have a platform. Regardless, their journey to market looks like figuring out how do I identify smallholder farmers in an environment to do validation, and then how do I raise enough capital to scale up production and some kind of developing their own sales channels often to reach this incredibly fragmented market. All of that is really capital inefficient, and so what we like about the Evergreen Innovation Platform is that it sort of consolidates that and takes some of the pressure off of individual startup companies to say, we're gonna come into a marriage with you and we're going to front a lot of the capital that you need. We've already raised it. We've got a funnel. Not everything is going to be successful, but we're going to support you through validation, and we're going to find the distribution channels that we have existing strong partnerships with the nonprofits that are holding needs of these smallholder farmers at the center of their mission. And that's going to really reduce the total amount of capital required in this system. That early stage, really scarce kind of funding to try to make it more efficient at testing and validating and moving towards scaled deployment of more higher innovation, higher novelty solutions for smallholder farmers. I think that we just really fell in love with that as an efficient system. There is a lot of great incubators that the government supports in India as well, but they're only doing a fraction of that sort of full value chain set of activities, and they require constant subsidy. So part of what we love is that EIP has all of these great mechanisms in their model for aligning incentives and interests. So nothing comes into the funnel unless it aligns with the smallholder needs that they have surfaced. They do really in-depth analyses and surveys every year. And they are able to do that because they have strong partnerships with nonprofit networks that have deep on the ground presence in farming communities. And they're able to test with those community-based entrepreneurs that are working with smallholder farmers, supplying inputs, offering services. So they've really aligned at the top of the funnel for what innovations are needed. And then they've aligned with the innovators themselves, those entrepreneurs, to say, if we take this on, we're gonna do the work to figure out, to validate, and to help you get into this market. If we're good at that, then we're gonna recapture some of that value off of your sales. So they really place their bet early on, but they are becoming self-sustaining as a platform by recapturing a percentage of sales. And Danielle, I could tell more about the exact models, but that's how I describe it. And so that really aligns incentives with the smallholder farmers first and foremost, as well as those entrepreneurs and their innovation. So I guess we really like that seamless design and capital efficiency in terms of how impact can be achieved more cost effectively.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It might be more interesting if Daniela walked through some examples that talk about like exactly how their process results in a company going through their process as opposed to what I described in that like companies going it alone and how that results in impact that actually matters for farmers. Daniela, do you want to give an example?
Sure, thank you. So so a good example, I think, is when we started, as Maggie mentioned, we always are first and foremost farmer-centric and demands-driven. So we spend a lot of effort in surveying farmers, sitting with them, understanding, um, and allowing them, of course, to communicate within their local language, not with me in English, of course, but to share the different levels of challenges, what they're looking for, what they're dealing with, what they're hoping for. We spend quite a lot of time on these surveys. And one of the first things that came up very, very strongly, and this came up quite consistently across across all of the different geographies that we've surveyed, which are 4 different states across India so far with our research, Maharashtra, MP, UP, and Bihar. Um, Soil health management, first and foremost. And of course, that's not surprising. It's the basics, right? It's the basis of any farm, as being able to understand your soil and manage your soil. But this came out overwhelmingly strong. And it's interesting because all else equal, there is a soil card, there is government policy to promote and support and subsidize soil testing across the country. And yet this was still coming up really as the primary issue. And so our first report sort of touched upon that. Our second report, we even did a deep dive into that challenge specifically and what it looks like. But we started looking at solutions that address soil testing and understanding that they need soil testing not only um, in terms of the knowledge they need it in a timely manner, which was a big issue. They need to understand what to do with the results. So they need translation, agronomic advisory, basically. And so we started comparing, right, sourcing different innovations that existed across our network into our pipeline and scoring them. And we actually validated 3 different solutions in this space. Um, and when I say validate, these have already been proven scientifically fully. So we're not talking about purely academic validation. We're actually talking about validation that is focused on what happens in real world circumstances with the smallholder farmers. What happens when we're able to bring a smallholder farmer that collects or needs support to collect a soil sample, brings it to wherever they're going to be testing and what it looks like on the ground for real. And that's the kind of validations that we spend our time doing. These are pilots, these are slowly become more and more commercially minded. Originally, they're more operationally focused, making sure that the solutions are easy to use, that the results are consistent with what we're seeing in lab results, and so on. And so once we validated the technology and we were able to, and the technology that we ended up moving forward with is called Soil Sati. It's a company called Arogya Medisoft that we've been working with and has continued, the process with us over multiple validation cycles, and now also have concluded the pre-commercialization efforts. And what does that mean, pre-commercialization? We actually will not only understand during the pilot, we again are focused on real world conditions. During the pre-commercialization efforts, we're already looking at market dynamics, pricing, costs. What do the unit economics look like? What does running a business around a soil testing device? So for the context, what we're able to do is take an entire lab and the product basically in a phone-sized box, because it's a box, it's not just the phone, but a phone-sized box with a set of reagents is able to basically accurately measure 14 different macro and micronutrient parameters give a result immediately and give advisory within 48 hours. That can be printed on the ground. Advisory meaning, based on what next the farmer is going to grow, what they're, what they need to do, what they need to be putting into their soil for the next season. And as part of the pre-commercialization efforts, this is the first time we actually saw the dynamics of selling this device. This device was sold to entrepreneurs, village level entrepreneurs, and they were giving services to the farmers. And they were able to cut the cost almost by half to what was available, even with the subsidies. So we're now working on introducing this into the subsidy scheme. But we were able to really reduce the cost and show that for the entrepreneur, it's actually a profitable business while still being much more efficient and fast for the farmer. And I've seen this on the ground. A big part of it is also post-sale support, understanding the dynamics of what else needs to happen, what kind of availability and support systems need to happen after sales to make sure that this continues to operate strongly on the ground. And a small anecdote, and then I'll pause because I don't know what the chat, but I see stuff happening in the chat. But an anecdote is one of my colleagues was doing one of our rounds on the ground and going to visit one of the centers, and a farmer really came up to him and just started thanking us, saying that his soil has been deteriorating for so long and he's been waiting so long for this kind of solution that, it really, anyway, that really makes all the difference in what we do. It's the small stories, but at the end of the day, we're able to do this, with hundreds of farmers just in the pre-commercial validation, and now we're moving to the next stage with them, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's an awesome story and it's inspiring. Again, I've worked with smallholders and to be able to deploy that kind of testing based on that many parameters and give advisory support within 48 hours, that's remarkable, right? That's a level of innovation. And then to find more cost efficiencies based on who is delivering those services is the coolest. It makes it accessible. Any other particular innovations that you want to highlight before we get into the audience questions?
Oh, I mean, well, the soil testing is just the start. We have biological inputs. One actually just won a prize yesterday at MIT. We've been working with them for years. But we have biologicals that fit in afterwards. So once we understand what's happening with the soil, we can deal with the right kind of inputs and help identify what those right inputs are, what are more we'll call them regenerative inputs. We don't really do full regenerative agriculture, but we do sort of small transitions. And one of the products is actually heat tolerance for plants, which I'm really excited about. It's a big issue, extreme heat stress for plants. Um, and the last example is we work with a company to do farming income with mushroom cultivation. What's exciting is that we're actually working across female farmers primarily that are really excited about this as well. There are many more innovations. I really like. I could give so many examples, but they complement each other and they come in together based on the surveys, based on the needs. We're able to aggregate and bundle them slowly together, and I think that's what's exciting also about the next phase of our work.
Last time I did a trip with Daniela, the farmers group that we spent time with was most excited. They were like, bring us the robots. They really wanted, I forget it was like it was not the like what you would expect in terms of the lower cost. They wanted these like farming robots that were going to enable the farmer group to offer it out as a service to like surrounding communities. Like they were really leaning into the entrepreneurial opportunities beyond improving their own growing. So I think like the farming groups are at different stages in terms of that degree of organization, but this one was like real hungry for like all the tech. I was pretty surprised.
Very cool. Very cool. think if the panelists agree, I think it's time to field a few questions. Before we do that, I want to take a moment to say something I should have said in the introduction. One of the uh, values of this network is that we're not pitching each other. So we have a no pitch policy in these sessions, and really important that we honor that. It's conversational. We're learning from each other, seeing where there are gaps, and see where there are opportunities to fill those gaps. So I believe with that, Stuart, is there a question that you have for the panel, or was just really providing a couple of links in the chat?
Yeah, it was just some background links to start with, just to introduce what we do. If it's of interest to anyone, feel free to contact me. But there was a question later on there also about whether Daniela's program is just India focused, or whether that kind of support, same with Lemelson Foundation really, can work in countries that do not include India.
So I can briefly address. We at the moment work solely in India. Do have a vision to expand, but we believe uh, a big part of our goal is to prove that this can be done in a for-profit, like a sustainable business model. And so we believe that we can unlock that first in India, and that will be our example to take it to other markets. We have been doing some consulting work to help other markets think through some of the unique designs of what we do, but more on a consulting capacity than anything else.
If you can do it in India, you can do it anywhere. That's my experience. It's a hard market. Thank you. And maybe Maggie as well. Does she just focus on India, or with Littleton
Yeah,
Foundation?
right now, we're pretty focused on India, Kenya, and the United States. And it looks really different in each of those places. So at the moment, we don't have like a deep focus on smallholder farmers anywhere but India.
Great. Thank you. I think Audrey has a question.
Yes, thank you. I actually have three,
Oh boy.
so I'll try to I'll try to keep them short and sweet. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's very exciting work you're doing. I wanted to ask first, when you're curating a portfolio of products that are the inputs for smallhold farmers, specifically for soil health, for example, how do you determine like which biostimulant products? I mean, I can think of three or four companies. My own family's been involved with a biostimulants business that's focused on nematode control and soil health for several decades. How is that decision made in terms of what it is you bring to these folks and ensuring that it's appropriately priced and packaged? Because this is the last mile. It's very difficult to sell. My second question relates to basically anyone who dips a toe in India will have already come across just dozens and dozens and dozens of intermediary organizations providing kind of distribution channels and inputs for smallhold farmers. Krishi Suchak is an example of a brand in various states that's really focused on the rural. How do those types of folks plug into EIP? What is the trade in terms of their engagement when you bring, all that you do to a market? And then lastly, this is really just related to moving past the inputs and into the aggregation and collectivization of the outputs. Can you speak a little bit more about how that plays out in terms of, fetching more just market traction when you're working with a catchment of smallholders in a particular district or a particular area? Because I can tell you, and I think Maggie and I have been co-investing and working together in various capacities for a long time. And I think we both know that one of the hardest places to invest, especially as an impact investor, is in agri. And that's the that's the place we've honestly lost the most money as an impact investor. And it's largely not because of the input side, but because of the output side management and the selling. So just curious what answers you might have to these.
Sure. Okay, I'm glad I wrote them down. Okay. So as for the portfolio of biostimulants, I'll start there. I perhaps didn't explain this on the conversation as well, but we work on a basis and we have a strategic partnership, which is the what allowed us to actually spin off with an Agri-Entrepreneur Growth Foundation. It's a spin-off of Syngenta Foundation's work. They're a standalone foundation, and what they do is they create agri-entrepreneurs. These are village-level entrepreneurs. They're self-sustaining businesses that service their community of farmers. And as of today, there are about 23,000 of these, aggregating close to 2.3 million farmers. That is our, I like to call, sandbox. That is where we do most of our, we do all of our validation within that sandbox, and all the initial pre-commercialization, we work directly within that network where we have the highest visibility and feedback loop and strong feedback loops on the ground to learn all of these things. So just so that you can understand the context in which we operate, and I think it's linked to all of the other questions as well. But when we look at curating a portfolio of products, especially biostimulants, there's two sides of it. So the nonprofit works very regularly on transitioning to higher value crops and transitioning to more regenerative practices. And so we align in many ways with a lot of what they're seeing. For existing products that are already out there, they are getting recommendations that aren't directly linked to the portfolio, to our portfolio necessarily, as long as these are proven biostimulants in the market. And there's been a few big changes in that space in India recently. As for the ones that we have that are newer, and I think that's been really the challenge, the validation process that we run is really important. And it's important to the team on the ground when we think about how to then bundle and how to understand which of these are most relevant and in what context, what can be used with them, if they can go along with mineral fertilizers and other non-biological inputs. So we really try to study it, but we haven't really gotten to a place where it's a large portfolio of biostimulants at this point. We still have just a few of them that are the newer ones. And when we validate, we try to understand, a big focus is understanding what the impacts of the new biostimulants with the existing inputs that are being used in this specific circumstance, so we can understand how they respond to each other and what that would mean. So hopefully that addresses the question somewhat. The intermediaries that do distribution, they actually fit very well in our model. Our original stages are to learn how the distribution would work, what kind of post-sale support. And what we've seen is players like Krishi Sutak, I think you mentioned. One of their challenges when working with a startup is they don't necessarily get the post-sales support, and the companies that they onboard aren't ready, and they don't have the capacity to prepare them or even to necessarily validate them. It's out of their core focus. So what we found is that the value that we can bring with the validation and the third-party reports that we create around what and how these products work, where they fit, what they're useful for, and what kind of post-sale support would be needed in terms of the logistics and so on. We found that is helpful to our partners and important to them. And so we do have partnerships with them. And once the technology has sort of graduated the pre-commercialization effort, we will do or include one of these partners in another round, or sort of share our knowledge and put them in touch as a marketplace for the solution. So our goal is every solution that's successful to make sure that he's working with as many distributors and understanding the pricing, the price points. Of course, those differ across states and so on. And so those are important partners for our startups as well. Last part is the output and the aggregation. That's a big part of what we're looking at, and definitely a lot of the potential is there. But we address it product by product, where our partners on the ground do a lot of the broader aggregation. So, like larger offtake partnerships to aggregate the smallholder farmers that work within our network is done through the nonprofits directly. Um, but when we're deploying a new technology, such as the mushrooms that we mentioned, we are looking at what a local off-taker looks like and how we create the marketplace and make sure that they have a place to sell and how we create competition around it and value-added products, etc. So I think our focus on that is going to continue to grow. It's still very initial stages for very specific products.
Thank you. 3 questions, well handled.
Hopefully.
I just want to follow up really quickly, Danielle, because I'm not sure I heard it, but like if there are 10 biostimulants walking in your door, how do you pick which ones you support or don't?
Oh, great question. Okay, so um, so we have a team of 4 agronomists. One has the expertise of R&D and biostimulants specifically. And what we will do is we will understand A, these are more general, so market potential, where they fit, what they fit for, and so on. So we do prioritize the larger market segments that we have across our networks. And then we will look at the research shown on efficacy, on the cross responsiveness, or I'm losing the word for that in English, sorry. But basically their interaction with other stimulants or other inputs. And we will look at, in some cases also, if it's purely biostimulants, it's not an issue, but even sometimes they're partially not fully biodegradable or have other sort of inputs. So we'll compare the actual structure, the actual ingredients across. But that's exactly where the team of PhDs that have been doing research in these spaces is critical because they're the experts.
But like what I get is for us from the non-science background, well-informed bets on which ones are going to work for the most people.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Which ones are going to have the most value for the most people? Yeah.
Audrey, is that clear or is there a follow-up?
Yeah, no, that was great, Maggie. That was exactly what I had in mind. So your follow-up was perfect. Thank you.
Sorry.
And Daniela, it's impressive that the level of analysis goes to, I think, contraindications is the word maybe you were looking for, where you're looking at not just what is the effect of this, but what is the effect of this with the presence of other things. So yeah, really remarkable. Yeah. Brad, we talked a lot about inputs. Daniela just addressed that, but yours is more focused on climate smart inputs, perhaps. Is there some nuance that you'd like to describe?
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much, and thank you all for the insights. I think two aspects maybe. The first is some of these issues around the provision of a soil testing and understanding of what are some of the soil deficiencies and so forth is obviously very, very helpful to a farmer. But then I guess the point of interaction from having a test to then going to an input dealer and dealing with some of the on the ground challenges of maybe the incentives on the input dealer side can sometimes maybe not directly correlate with maybe what comes out of the soil testing. There could be incentives to promote certain products. I think Daniela, you've talked a little bit about that, how you can help to I guess align those interests. But it'd be interesting to see, maybe downstream, do you guys have tie-ups with specific input providers and or certain technologies? And I guess on a second question, more strategically, how does EIP look at this? The more now you're upstream, on soil testing, do you start to look for downstream, investments along the value chain, maybe around, the next issue for the farmers, maybe how am I going to get financing to buy these inputs? So do you look at, financing, facilitating financing to try to look for synergies between your investments? Or how do you look at this strategically, I guess, from a value chain once you start entering a particular area do you strategically invest along that value chain or that approach?
Hey, Brad, thanks for those questions. Really thoughtful. So I think the in terms of the incentives for input providers, and the input seller, in many cases, the entrepreneurs that we target for the soil testing are the ones that are selling other inputs. On the village in the village level. So they are already selling inputs and they're able to curate for their farmers based on what they have. Now, having said that, we are seeing, or there is potential for incentives for them to push other or prioritize other inputs, not necessarily exactly what the farmers need. Um, in our experience, because this is sort of more of a recurring game between these entrepreneurs and the farmers in their village, the impact of their recommendation really matters. And there's a layer of accountability that is created by the nonprofit, by AGF, because they are following and supporting these entrepreneurs with advisory services, free support, mentorship to grow their business, and so on. And all of that is dependent on good behavior with the smallholders. So, serious unaligned incentives will probably be caught by this mechanism. And so we haven't put and so this was taken into account in the design originally and in the work of this, like in partnering with this kind of model on the ground, which creates some accountability between the last mile distributor and the input sales and the farmers. But we are looking at, and I love that you said that. I actually love both of your questions because they're both directions that we're in sort of initial exploration phases of like really seeing if we can tie up with input providers, to support the right ones to support perhaps more soil testing linked to their products. But that's still very initial, very initial phases for us. In terms of the financing, this is definitely really important, looking at financing for the products themselves as well. So we start off usually with those entrepreneurs that are a little bit more well off, that have been doing well with their businesses, and they're able to put up cash for a soil testing device, and as an example. But we've already modeled what it looks like um, to do that under a loan. And what kind of financial support we would need to deploy more of these devices. So the financing facilities for those and the synergies are definitely something that from day one we've been looking at to make sure. So a lot of our work is on the business model and is on the affordability of these solutions for the farmer, but also for the entrepreneurs. We have done some of the modeling. We're exploring different kinds of partners, if it's NBFCs or perhaps even with some development finance institutions. They have some programs that are offering financing. But that does go into our modeling from day one. And that's another direction that we're sort of touching on. I'll say we're still in initial phases there too.
Thank
That's
you.
brilliant. Brilliant. Danish asked a great question. I love this one. You have a magic wand and you can wish for anything and you can make it happen. Maggie, what would that be for you? And Daniela, what would it be for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy in my world to like my magic wand is that there's more extremely risk tolerant, patient, and willing to return like accept below market rate return investment in order to achieve value that is non-monetary that I think we need to see in the world, and that is perhaps more critical for us all. Um, and I guess in the absence of that, like, yeah, we're looking at models where it's like, okay, if we do need more, and in the meantime, what are the most like efficient ways that we can use the really scarce capital. So like more models like this that enable us to put money to work to do more towards creating that value faster.
Brilliant.
My magic wand. I feel like I'm supposed to say that we need the funding to get to our break-even point. Like it would be irresponsible not to. But the truth is, I really want to be at the point, at that break-even point. The break-even point is a game changer for me, for us, for this market, I think. It's a point in which we're able to show that we can, the innovation piece specifically can be unlocked through for-profit sustainable business models. Um, and I hope that means that philanthropic money moves away from this space a little bit, towards the places where really the business models don't work and where models like ours that are market focused, target market focused, we're all about the smallholders. It's not an agri, we're not a general innovation program. We are very, very focused on the expertise that sits between smallholder farmer market and innovation. And I'd like to see that, like more players like us that are specialized, because if we prove this model, I think that'll unlock that specialization. And I think it's interesting. Yet yesterday, I read a post that came out from the Ag Funder report about the specialization in venture capital in the agri space, and I think that's a healthy thing. And I think that's what needs to happen here as well. So, yeah, I want there to be more like I want the model to be proven. That's what we're fighting for, and that's where yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you both. And Dinesh, thank you for that question. It's always interesting to see where the respondents go with it. Greta, I think you have a question?
Thank you. I mean, it was partly answered before, so I think,
Okay, great.
yeah, I can take the Daniela's answer.
Great. Audrey, I don't want to synthesize your question. It is more complex than I'm able to.
Yeah, sorry guys. We've just had so much pain investing in agri that I'm jumping all over it. Daniela, when investors are looking at ag, intermediaries like the ones we've invested in, a couple of examples, farm folks in Karnataka, Ibono in Tamil Nadu, all of these basically crashed and burned because they didn't have an EIP in their system that bolstered their on the ground work. How do you have a sense of how the value proposition evolves in material terms for these types of companies that are trying to serve the last mile with inputs and then take the outputs and aggregate them and add value? Like, is there a sense of what your intervention brings into the financial and impact calculus? And is this not one way, if it's articulated clearly, isn't this a way of getting the impact investors focused on agri to think about investing in EIP itself? And then ultimately, does your break even come from the success of your clusters of smallholders that are working on specific commodities or supply chains, or is it more linear than that?
So, so I think the value, what we find that we're doing with a lot of the companies, is thinking through their business strategies, their growth strategies. And what we're able to do is reduce the burden. So we have companies that have raised really, really big amounts of money for the Indian smallholder market because it is so expensive to build the last mile distribution. And they're investing and the economics of that sort of force a failure because these companies are so highly valuated because they had to raise so much money to do all of this themselves, one at a time, replicated in each location, that it's really, really hard. Like it puts a really, it's just impossible. Like it's almost impossible to succeed. At the end of the day, it's all about the unit economics and being able to return. Like we raise capital, it's much more modest and much more focused. Um, and we leverage partnerships and we focus on partnerships that allow us to do a lot of these things without controlling and owning a lot of it. So I think there part of it is IP, but I don't think it's just on the IP. There's so much that had to go in to develop the distribution. Um, and again, the margins are very small, and the ecosystem is so disconnected and disorganized and complicated, and it's full of governmental players and nonprofit players that you have to create so many layers of expertise that it's really a very challenging game. We are seeing more models that are working with tying in sort of the offtake agreements and sort of um, taking on sort of more of a full cycle approach, right? Looking from inputs to off takers. I've seen a few models that are working really well. But a big part of what we do with the companies, apart from aggregating all these relationships and being able to be very effective with where and how they deploy their own local presence and what kind of networks they can leverage without creating the same level of presence is really important. And so, yes, I think investing in platforms like us, where we're really bringing, instead of giving the companies money to sort of figure it out on themselves, we bring a huge layer of expertise to the story and a network. And and again, and it's even quite common in innovation. If you look at the Y Combinators or these models that they worked really well in the world, it's all about the value of relationships that they're cultivating over time and aggregating into one place, and then bringing through the right deal flow into that network and continuously growing that network. So, so yeah, I do believe that in an impact investor perspective, um, this is a way to efficiently deploy capital and bring it to companies. And then investing in growth of some of these companies at a later stage, much smaller numbers, because it will be much more precise. So I think success will follow that. And the second part of the question was our success as EIP. So it is linked to the success of our farmers, but it's more linked to the success of our companies. Where our long-term success is on the sales to the smallholder farmers. So we rely on the fact that smallholders will purchase and will continue to purchase products that are valuable to them. They will continue to work with those products. And we basically collect a commission on the sales. So our portfolio of companies that are supplying these products continues to grow over time. We, of course, onboard much more than we actually see reaching the ground, but that's by design, right? And those that are reaching the ground are able to sell successfully. We align the farmer's success and the farmer's value of the product with the value to the startup and with the commissions that we get. So we're really the last in line um, to see the benefit, but we make sure that we take part in those successes. And that's what drives our business model to be self-sustaining and grow actually pretty nicely over time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Daniela. Tracy, I think you have a question.
Yes, I was wondering what DFIs you're targeting and what ticket sizes you're looking at. And the reason that I asked specifically regarding the ticket sizes is that several DFIs have a minimum ticket size. Some say 10 million, others do 5. That's one question. And a second question is sometimes the distribution locations are a barrier to product uptake. And I'm wondering if that's something that you've seen as well.
Yeah. So yeah, the DFI question is a great question. We are looking towards more European DFIs. 10 million is too much. We don't need that much. We need about 5 million, depending on the time horizon. Could probably increase that a bit, but we're looking for those who are um, able to invest, but more specifically, a lot of the DFI work is through partnerships, program partnerships as well, and not only the direct investment. So we had actually been in the process. Well, yeah, we've been in the process with the DFI with IFC when they had the upstream capital facility, which were smaller ticket sizes, which is more so the technical assistance slash upstream capital, the more risky early stage, smaller ticket sizes is where we're looking. And right now we're looking to European DFIs primarily, actually. In terms of the distribution locations, because of the network that we sit on, we're able to identify the specific solution for the specific area that it's in most demand. So far, especially for the initial stages of commercialization, that has been working really well. Because we're so data-based and we have such granular data about the different dynamics and the needs on such on a very localized level. So we've been able to leverage that. And we're now developing partnerships that are sort of outside of that data set and our sort of sandbox. So we have a few partners that are now looking to deploy some of our solutions in other contexts, and we're looking forward to learning about those experiences as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Stuart, you made a comment and I think you had a question. Is that right?
Yeah, if you're referring to my blurb there on India and solar panels, there was one. I spent a bit of time in India for the World Bank looking at very low yield lands in Karnataka and what might be done about it. And the calculation suggested that you could actually make 10 times more money out of the land by farming the sun instead of the land. Australian farmers are basically finding the same thing by tapping into renewable energy generation on their land rather than growing food, particularly in the poorest quality land. They're stabilizing the future of the farm. So I was just wondering if that was, a bit of an opportunity, particularly given the waste of money that some of the subsidies are for the inputs to farming. And I know there's a farm versus food, tension there as well. But if one looks at very low quality land, then it's less of an issue, and that's also where the poorest people are often trying to survive. The other one is just a quick mention of Kiva being a big mobiliser of low interest loans, which there seems to be not enough of. We've used them a couple of times in the last 15 years. So just a little bit out of the box. It's not exactly an agricultural input, very different way of making money off the land, but is that something to consider maybe?
I can mention briefly that we have started looking at agrovoltaics. Sorry, I was hearing myself. Agrovoltaics is a direction, so not moving away from agriculture, but adding in solar is a direction that we started looking at companies in the space. We haven't yet worked with anyone.
Yeah, and that's resonates with me because looking at the highest economic use of the land may not be aligned with what the landowner is able to do with the land, right? That's the only land they have, and what they are skilled in is smallholder agriculture. To depart from what they're used to is not necessarily viable, even though it makes most economic sense. Let's see. Ariana, you had a question, please?
Sure. Yeah, I wrote it in the chat, but just I guess picking up on the earlier comment around farmers that are most acutely feeling kind of climate impacts, being sort of maybe the most willing to change and invest, and just wondering if some of those improved resilience outcomes of, switching inputs are being measured, and given that there's kind of more and more limited capital, but some of the climate finance spaces are, still have some capital to spend. Is that something that you're looking at in terms of really measuring those climate outcomes and maybe looking for complementary investors through that channel?
So we're definitely seeing them. I don't know if they're more willing to take risk. Especially resilience is actually a really hard one unless we're able to show value immediately. They're still as cautious, I would just say. They're still as cautious. Perhaps when they see it works, they'll adopt it faster. But they're still very cautious when looking at these products as well. And when we look at resilience, I think that the biggest challenge is they're important when things go wrong, but a lot of times they don't necessarily go wrong, which is why we're still looking at interventions that are competitive in price and or create additional value regardless of the resilience element. So have some sort of increased yields regardless of. So that is important to state. We're not yet in the resilience for purely resilience because farmers don't adopt that easily without programs of larger nonprofits and so on, where you are seeing other streams of financing come in. And for the resilience impacts, we have not yet gotten to a phase where we're looking at other financial streams for those projects at this point. We are measuring the impacts, but we haven't explored that direction.
Thanks.
Great. I am not seeing any other questions in the chat. Are there other questions that somebody would just like to ask? I think Dinesh is asking. Dinesh, would you like to ask your question or should I read it?
Sure. Thank you, Daniela and Maggie. Just two questions. The first one, how do you define small? I mean, what is small in terms of your definition? And second, it's a bit tricky and also connects with something what Audrey has been saying. Have you thought of a flip model where farmers can be incentivized to increase quality and quantity of their crop yields due to latest technologies or soil health measurements and whatnot, and also collecting that data and then selling data, or the third-party data providers pay you for the data? And why this is also an important in the context of local intermediaries, which are more or less mafias. I mean, I don't live in India for many years, but I know how the system is. So just these two questions. Thank you.
Yeah. So in our context, small is generally 5 acres and below. In most cases, those are the farmers. In the broader sense, sometimes small farmers are defined also a bit larger, but in our context, that's the size. In terms of incentivizing higher quality and quantity, and that's really sort of the off-taker approach, which is something that we are looking into, adding traceability into it, seeing if there are premium markets that they can access and if we can aggregate them. But it's still early in our process of looking at them. I'm not sure that flips sort of the way we're working, but we do have a partner that we started working with that is already sort of, they have a bit of a different approach, but they really do larger transition for the smallholders. They take over the management, the smallholders focus on the farming, and they aggregate off-takers. And so we're seeing how our technologies are implemented in that, and going to see how that impacts their the offtake and the prices, and see if we can then replicate that or grow with them as a partner. We'll see. But indeed, the mafias and the intermediaries in the region you have to work with them, through them. but also find ways to work around. It's the reality of the space.
Yeah. Are there other questions?
Yeah, one final question from me. Sorry, I've asked too many this time, but Daniela, coming back to the magic wand, and I know this is not about pitching EIP right now, but what do you need in the next 9 to 12 months? And in what form is that need? And who are your ideal funders, supporters, investors?
Thank you, Audrey, for that. What we need for the next 12 to 18 months is about $1.5 million, perhaps a little less for that period. What we're looking for are the form of that. We've decided to focus more on grants, but it can be also recoverable grants. We're very comfortable with impact investment vehicles, and I think the most important thing to us is working with people who deeply care about the smallholder farmer market. So this market segment that we're working with, bringing in funders that are aligned with us, with our vision for that market segment, and wouldn't and investors that wouldn't look to pull us away from it, but improve our business in that specific market segment. And I think that's really the most important sort of thing the most important to us is just maintaining aligned partners that'll pull us more and more towards the business side of the smallholder farmer market. As I said, the magic wand is that in this, 4 years or 5 years, when we're break even, you know, to continue and just be a bankable company, a normal company. Of course, making a lot of impact, but yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Sorry, quick one. And in which countries your company is registered? Only in the US or US and India? So where are you raising, in the US or in India?
I'm raising primarily in the US, but we have a company in India as well.
Fair. Thank you.
Daniela, the company in India is a private limited?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Great. We are coming to the end of the session. I would love to give an opportunity for one more question, and then I will close it out. Okay. So I just want to say thank you. It's been a great session. It's conversational in nature, like we'd hoped. Really appreciate the insights from the panelists and the participants. So thank you. What I will do is in the next few days, you'll get a little note from me, everybody who registered for this event, along with a link to the video. So if there's anything you didn't catch, you can go back into it and take another look. If there is nothing else, I just want to say lovely to spend this hour and 15 minutes with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.